Dillon Gabriel is going to have a great year, and he's not the only Oregon quarterback that I'm interested to watch.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks, which is why, if you have not already, please like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to or watch this show, which today is brought to you by Ultimate College Football HC, a brand new mobile game that's completely free, has no ads, 100% playable offline. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Begin your coaching legacy today. Jam-packed show here on a Monday. Does Dan Lanning need to prove himself in big games? I have thoughts on that matter. And Jonah Williams picks Texas. Where does Oregon go next on their recruiting trail? That is coming up on today's show. But start with Dillon Gabriel, who I think is going to have the best statistical season of his career. He's just not the only quarterback I'm interested to watch. College football fans have a tendency, and I don't think Oregon fans are different. I don't even think this is a bad thing, especially for someone in my particular position. They have a tendency to always have an eye on what comes next. I think any sports team can do that. I think it's most prevalent in college sports. What's the future going to look like? How is the coach going to build? Are the recruiting classes lining up to make this the year where, you got to go get it, you're going to have returners and all that sort of stuff? Oregon's 2025 quarterback room going to be fascinating. I'm going to start with Dillon Gabriel, then get to Dante Moore and Austin Novosad, who we'll see as early as this week, I expect, when Oregon plays on Saturday, 5 days away. Flash the 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 fingers on my right hand. Boom. That many days away until Oregon plays a real football game. But I expect Dillon Gabriel to have the best statistical season of his career. I think he had a good offensive line last year. I think he had a good receiving core. He had a good team. He's on a better one. Better offensive line, better receiving core, better team overall. I think a better head coach. So yeah, I think he's going to have the best season of his career. And it's not his first time playing college football, of course. So regular season only, I think Gabriel gets in the neighborhood of 4,000 yards passing. Last year, he was just over 3,600 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 6 picks. He also ran for 12 touchdowns. I don't think he runs for as many this year, but logging it right here, right now, bookmark it, sketch it in stone. 3,987 passing yards, 35 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and I think he runs for 6 touchdowns. That's just regular season, not factoring in postseason play. That's what I think Dillon Gabriel goes for this year. The leading receiver, Tez Johnson. I think he's going to be Dillon Gabriel's favorite target. He's Drake Stoops plus. Drake Stoops was Oklahoma's leading receiver last year. That's going to be Tez Johnson this year. Slot guy, underneath route, not a ton of downfield shots, but yards after the catch. We know Tez Johnson is really, really good with that. I'm excited to watch Dillon Gabriel in this offense. Joel Klatt has talked extensively on his show before about how he feels Gabriel's in a better offensive system, a more point guard facilitating role going into this year with Oregon, as opposed to last year with Oklahoma, who wanted to extensively push the ball down the field. We know that that's something Oregon's offense does, certainly more than it used to, but doesn't do it at the same rate that big-time passing offenses in college football have done it over the last couple of years. You think back to Washington last year, LSU from years ago, or take any great passing team in the country, they probably push it down the field a lot more. Oregon runs a lot of RPOs, and Joel Klatt, myself, think that Dillon Gabriel is really, really well suited to thrive in that sort of offense. So I think he has the best season yet of his career. I don't think he blows last year's numbers out of the waters, because make no mistake about it, if he puts up identical numbers to what he did last year, Oregon's in great shape. Oregon's winning at least 11 games. If Gabriel is just the same guy he was last year, I think he's got another half gear in him, but 3,600 yards, just under 70% completion, 30 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, sign me up. Sign me up. With the way this schedule works out, with the way Oregon's team is, that is more than good enough for Oregon to get to the Big Ten championship game and compete for a national championship. But the other quarterbacks that we will see in all likelihood this Saturday against Idaho, assuming all goes according to plan, which it will, Dante Moore and Austin Novosad. These guys are slated right now to be in a dead heat quarterback battle in the spring. You'd think Dante Moore has the advantage. No question about it. The relationship, back when they were both being recruited out of high school in 2023, Dante Moore was a little higher rated. Dante Moore was the more desirable of the two in the eyes of this coaching staff. It was when Dante Moore flipped to UCLA that they flipped Austin Novosad from Baylor. But if Moore had never left, they would have taken him over Novosad. Still, I continue to be impressed. Anytime I go back and watch the highlights or just think about how Austin Novosad played in the spring game, outside of that poor decision on the interception on the deep ball, when he threw it in double coverage, he made some high-level throws. He was executing at a really, really high level consistently. He made big-time throws down the field, over the middle, short throws, made a lot of really good reads as well. But with Dante Moore, you have to think he's got the edge. I don't think that it is a 100% lock. And as these guys play throughout the course of the season, I'm interested to see how they look in games, because spring game is one thing. It's a data point. But more tangible data points, what do you do during the game when you get in for mop-up duty, which is going to happen? So this question came in from Willie. YouTube comments, X, formerly known as Twitter. You can get in the mailbag over there. If you want priority access, become a Locked On Ducks insider. That link is in the description below wherever you listen to or watch this show. Willie asks, because of Oregon's high hopes this year, still playing late in the year, would you take the over or under of Dante Moore being put in the second half 4 times this year? 4 times. I want to take the over. I think the number is 4. So if you put it at 4.5, I'd go under. If you put it 3.5, I'd probably go over. This Saturday against Idaho for sure. And if you are dead set on keeping it at a solid number, which is not what our friends at FanDuel do, but if you're doing it at Willie's Sportsbook that way, I would take the over. Idaho, Illinois, Maryland, Purdue. I think those are all games where if Oregon plays to their potential, you're getting the backup quarterback in at some point in the second half. And I hope they do they do what they did last year as opposed to years prior, where the backup is actually allowed to run the offense a little bit more and get some live game reps. So Idaho, you should have that. Illinois, Maryland, Purdue, all games where you are capable of getting the backups in late in the game. Oregon State, also possible. Boise State, I think a little less possible. I have higher expectations of Boise State than I do for Oregon State this year. They lost a lot in the transfer portal. Still, it's going to be a hostile environment. It's not going to be, because you have to get a giant lead, right? You have to be up in the fourth quarter by 30 or more points, generally speaking. Maybe 28 would be okay later in the game, but I lean towards the over, because Oregon has got opportunities. Maybe if they got up big against Washington, they're a 19.5 point favorite, which is a really, really big number for a Washington team that is kind of hard to predict. But I think both quarterbacks get on the field, Dante Moore and Austin Novosad, that is. I think they both get on the field this Saturday against Idaho at some point. It could be the last time we see Novosad. It could not be the last time we see Novosad. Maybe they've begun the 2025 quarterback battle right here and now. At some level they have. They're giving coaches information. They're making throws in practice. They're executing the offense, and they're showing them what they're capable of. So, in addition to what they've already shown in practice and in the spring game. I also wonder, I don't think this is a consideration. I wonder if Novosad gets into a game he wouldn't otherwise to preserve Dante Moore's red shirt. The way that Dante Moore has talked about the NFL in the past and his desire to get there, I don't expect him to want to hold on to a red shirt to have that extra year of eligibility. I can't confirm that, though. It's possible he could say, yeah, maybe I want to take a red shirt year, play in 4 games or fewer, and go into next year as a redshirt sophomore rather than a true junior, and still have 2 years potentially, or 3 years potentially to start rather than just 2. So I think the quarterback room is really, really good. I love where it's at. I love the long-term outlook. I love the way they've recruited the position, brought in guys from the portal the last couple of years. It feels like they're going to go with a young guy going into 2025, just a matter of who that is. Let me know your thoughts in YouTube comments or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter. A question about Dan Lanning that pops up every now and then. I don't fully understand. I kind of do. I kind of don't. That's coming up next. Hey, Locked On Ducks fans, want to take a moment to give you a heads up on a brand new mobile game I think you're going to love, Ultimate College Football HC. In this amazing game and simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Can you imagine actually being the head coach of the Ducks and having that in your pocket, on your phone, all the time, wherever you go? You can do that. From recruiting players and hiring coaching staff to overseeing training camps, it's all in your hands, and you're calling the plays during the game. So your strategy is actually going to impact the long-term outlook and the immediate success of your program. Ultimate College Football HC is completely free. Has no ads, 100% playable offline. You can play on the go as you want to and when you want to. And of course, we have a special offer for Locked On Ducks fans. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk as it will get your team off to a strong start. To download the game, just visit ultimate-cfb.com or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate College Football HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. Talking about coaching legacies on Ultimate College Football HC. Is there anything as legendary as a second segment sip? Not for me. Not for me. My ability to give you a quality show, which is my job, it is my sworn duty here as the host of Locked On Ducks, relies entirely on having a glass right there. I've never done a broadcast without taking sips of water. Why? Because your mouth gets dry and then nothing goes right. Mailbag question came in here from Nathan about the man, the myth, the legend, Dan Lanning himself. Again, YouTube comments, X formerly known as Twitter, or become an insider, that link in the description below. Nathan asks, "Hi Spencer, I think you're one of the nicest guys in the industry." Well, you haven't met me personally. I try to be a nice guy though. Thank you. Thanks for keeping the podcast fun. Two things. One, how concerned are you from 1 to 10 about Lanning's in-game chops, given he hasn't won the big one? 2, speaking of in-game chops, how scared are you of Bama as a sleeping giant, given that DeBoer has it and is recruiting lights out? I'll answer the second one first because it's a quick answer. Bama's not going anywhere. I think Bama's going 11-1 this season. They're recruiting at a top 5 level. They have the number 2 class in the 25 cycle right now. Kalen DeBoer just got Washington to a national championship game, a level they literally had not been to in the modern era, with like top 15, 20 classes. You give him top 5 classes, good luck, everybody. So, yeah, that's highly concerning to be sure. But that's why recruiting matters and such. We'll talk about that more later on the show. But on a 1 to 10, how concerned am I about Lanning's in-game chops, given that he hasn't won the big one? I assume you're talking about the national championship. My concern level is at about a 2. It's about a 2. Here's why. When you look at Dan Lanning's track record and you follow, YouTube comments, for instance, or notes here or criticisms that fans will levy against Lanning, I think it's a smaller minority. I still see it pop up on my channel all the time or on my Twitter feed. There is a criticism that Lanning hasn't won enough big games. And I don't quite understand how you can say that. He has lost some big games. Yes. You know who else has lost big games? Every single coach in the history of college football. Like, yeah, he couldn't beat Kalen DeBoer. Has not beaten Kalen DeBoer in his career. You know how long it took Kirby Smart to beat Nick Saban? Pretty hard. Took him a long time. Nick Saban dominated Kirby Smart. Nick Saban typically dominated every former assistant that he had. And guess what? Kirby Smart is now the best coach in all of college football. And he's won 2 national championships. Sometimes this stuff takes a minute. Heck, you could look at Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. Make whatever you want of the documentary that's coming out tomorrow about Connor Stallions. I'm going to watch that. I would encourage you all to as well, because it's going to be fascinating. But Jim Harbaugh was hired in 2015, 2016. He didn't beat Michigan until 2021. There is a difference. Josh Pate makes this point regularly. There's a difference between can't and haven't. If you judge a coach by the number of conference titles he's won in his first 2 years coaching, Kirby Smart would be a bum. If you judged a coach by the number of national championships he'd won in his first 2 years coaching, we should have fired Kirby Smart a long time ago, because he didn't do either of those things. He did not win the SEC or win a national championship in his first 2 years as a head coach. And from year 1 to year 2, I saw Lanning get better as an in-game coach. And no, he clearly is not perfect. You know why? Because Oregon lost games last year that they could have or should have won. But I haven't seen any evidence that Lanning is not self-criticizing or self-evaluating or working to get better as a head coach. So then the big games factor about, he hasn't won the big one here or there. Dan Lanning has not. I was about to say a double negative there. Allow me to rephrase and start that sentence over so it sounds a little bit smoother. Pretend all of that never happened. Dan Lanning has beaten ranked opponents in big games on big stages several times already early in his Oregon career. The Oregon State game last year, 31-7. That was a good Oregon State team. Good Oregon State team. Was not close. I know he hasn't beaten Washington yet. I expect him to this year, and boy, he better. But it turns out he's going up against some great teams with a bunch of great players and a really, really good coach that Alabama saw fit to hire. Lest we forget that Utah was the number 13 team in the country when Oregon went into Salt Lake City and beat them on a field where they hadn't lost with fans in the stands in 5 years. Or the year prior when Bo Nix had one leg and Dan Lanning is 2-0 against Kyle Whittingham. Okay, you ask anyone in the college football world that's been around for a while, they'll tell you Kyle Whittingham, I think Joel Klatt actually just rated him as one of the 5 best head coaches in college football. Lanning just beat him back-to-back years. After Mario Cristobal got housed by Whittingham twice in a 3-week span. 4-week span, whatever it was. I think it was a 3-week span. Was not good. So I'm not looking at Dan Lanning saying he's a finished product as a head coach, but in no way do I have concerns about, I don't know if he could win a big game. College game day was at Oregon a couple years ago. Undefeated UCLA was in town, who had already beaten the eventual Pac-12 champion Utah Utes. And yeah, Dan Lanning outcoached Chip Kelly in that game. He did. And I think Lanning's gotten better year 1 to year 2. I think he can get better year 2 to year 3. So, no, I don't have a concern. This one from Aaron Turn 5954, who asked a question recently, and I like this one too, because it's a hot take. You just didn't know how hot it was. Hot take. Kenyon Sadiq will have 400 or more rushing yards this year. Yeah, can I rate this on the same sort of level as Dillon Gabriel will have 5 500-yard passing games? Yeah, it's about that hot. Why? Brock Bowers is the best rushing tight end in recent memory. Kyle Pitts of Florida would be up there as well. Brock Bowers only had over 100 rushing yards one time in his 3 seasons in college football. So no, Sadiq's not going to get to 400 yards. Will he get the ball every now and then? Yep. Will it be really fun? Yes. Is he going to get enough carries to get to that level? No. No, he's not. But he is the Swiss Army knife for this Oregon offense. I think he'll have a bigger role this year, and next year he could be one of the premier weapons in the entire Big Ten at any position. This one from an everydayer on YouTube, user HF1SS6EN1H. Just want to be specific. Hey, Spencer, everyday listener here. Is it better for Oregon to get the 5 seed in the playoff and play most likely Liberty or another G5 team, or get another seed and get a bye, but then play someone like an Ole Miss or Georgia? Keep up the great work and go Ducks. I think for the playoff, I can go either way. I really can. I've watched this play out, particularly in baseball, many times over the years. There are teams that can play well off a bye and sitting that extra week, and there are teams that play well because they have a game the prior week. If you get the 5 seed, i.e. don't win the Big Ten, and let's say Oregon goes, just hypothetically, 12-0, but loses the Big Ten championship game. They're 12-1. They're the number 5 seed, and Notre Dame is sitting there at 11-1 or 10-2 as the next at-large team, which they absolutely could be. If Oregon hosts the G5, the positives are that you're in rhythm. You don't have any real rust there, but you've also already played 12 regular season college football games, so you should be a well-oiled machine at that point. But then you run the risk of a player getting injured in the game. It's an injury. I don't think there's a huge advantage one way or the other. I'm not worried about Oregon matching up with a G5 champion. But if they're, 10-2 and they're the number 11 seed, for instance, well, suddenly you might be traveling to a Notre Dame or traveling to an Ole Miss, for instance, as an at-large team in the first round of the playoffs. But I think 10 wins introduces an unwanted variable for Oregon to get into the playoff. I think it gets them in. Not 100% confident that it will, though. If Oregon wins 11 games in the regular season, they don't have to win the Big Ten. They will be into the playoff no matter what. And if they get the 5 seed, they get a home playoff game. And Autzen would be rocking. I am on record Many a times, I still feel this way. I'm not a fan of the 12-team playoff. Doesn't mean there aren't elements about it that I'm not going to enjoy. Home playoff games, sign me up. That's going to be very, very fun. There's still more questions to get to on today's show, but one of them is, where does Oregon turn next on the recruiting trail? That's coming up next. Are you tired after lunch? You're not alone. I get that way all the time. In fact, research shows that more than 70% of us hit the wall after lunch. Let a 5-hour energy shot help you leap over that wall instead of crashing into it. With zero sugar and a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done, which I have to do now because I've got the shows to do, play-by-plays back in season. I got a lot of work to do. The 5-Hour Energy website has flavors galore. They've got watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and more. There's a flavor for everyone, so go try them all. On the site, you even have the option to build your own 12 or 24 pack. You choose the flavors, and it's delivered right to your door. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5 and then hourenergy.com, and get some 5-Hour Energy product today, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid till September 30th on one order, cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. LOCKEDONCFB, that's the code at 5hourenergy.com. Go check out 5-Hour Energy today. So it turns out recruiting is hard. Yeah. And when Oregon has major recruiting wins, it is something to celebrate because you don't win every single battle, unlimited NIL or not. So Jonah Williams, top linebacker / safety in the class of 2025, he decides to go to Texas. Oregon is down to the number 12 class in the country. That can easily be catapulted inside the top 10, and it is capable, if they get a couple more names, particularly big ones, of getting back inside the top 5, which is where they were in the 2024 cycle. But I'd expect Oregon to pick up a handful of commits during the season. That number is probably no more than, I'd say 5 is the upper limit. It's probably going to be closer to 3. That's my guess right now, based on the guys they're looking at, names that they could potentially flip. There's a tight end commit at Washington, we'll probably talk about later on the show this week, that Oregon might be able to flip, as in he's currently committed to the Huskies, is what I mean when I say from Washington. But Oregon is still in the thick of it, according to Steve Wiltfong of On3 for Michael Terry III. He has visits lined up already, 2 games at Nebraska. He's going to the Nebraska-Colorado game, which is going to be something. It's going to be something. Anytime Prime's in town, it's something. He's also got a visit scheduled to go to a Texas game. If Oregon wants to get Michael Terry III, who's a 5-star athlete, could play tight end, could play receiver, running back, defensive end, he's truly an athlete. He's just a big-time athlete. That's something Oregon has to do. You got to be able to get him on campus when everybody else is doing so, but I still like the Oregon recruiting class. They don't have as high of a volume, but the caliber of guys they've gotten, you have the number 1 receiver, you have the number 1 safety. They were trying to get the number 1 linebacker in Jonah Williams. They're trying to get the number 1 athlete in Michael Terry III. They're going big game hunting, and it turns out you're not going to get every single one of those guys. But if Oregon could flip Naeem Offord, a 5-star from Ohio State, which has been rumored for a while, has not actually happened, of course, or we would have been talking about it here on the show, and land a couple other guys, this will still end up being a top 10 recruiting class. The volume is considerably smaller compared to the last couple of cycles, which leads me right into this question, which came from Brandon. How many players do you think we will take in this year's portal class? So in the 2024 cycle, Oregon brought in the number 2 transfer portal class in the country per 24/7 Sports. They brought in 14 guys. If this high school recruiting class in the 25 cycle stays under 20, I'd be pretty shocked if Oregon brings anything fewer than 10 transfers. I think this year had 8 guys go to the NFL draft and a couple more that were lost to graduation. And there are going to be a healthy amount of guys that are not returning after this season. And you'll have a couple players perhaps transfer out. But Dan Lanning has spoken multiple times about how they're really proud of the fact that they haven't had a starter transfer out of the program in the 2 years that he's been here. And that is quite impressive. I mean, Ohio State had their starting quarterback transfer. Now they might have, forced him out because he was just okay last year. And Kyle McCord, he's at Syracuse now. But it's an uncommon thing in the transfer portal era to not have starters leave. They've had backups leave. They've had rotation guys leave. Have not had anyone they'd classify as, hey, you're number one on the depth chart, leave in the last couple of years. We'll see how long that keeps up. I'd be shocked if it's like that forever and ever and ever. But it's been that way so far, and if you can keep it up, I think that's a good thing. But there's going to be a lot of turnover on this roster going into next year. I think that's why the volume of players in the 2023 and 4 recruiting cycles was so high, because they knew that they wanted to bring in their types of players and not just have a bunch of guys from the Mario Cristobal era, some of whom have been very good, of course. Troy Franklin was a holdover, JPJ was a holdover, Jeff Boss, like a bunch of impact guys were, quote unquote holdovers from the Mario Cristobal era. But I think they have retained most of those players and brought in so many kids that they don't need. I don't think they're going to go bonkers with some like 20 to 25 player transfer portal class. I think you're going to see a lot of the players from the last 2 cycles step up and have to fill roles that are vacated by graduating seniors or guys going to the NFL draft who might otherwise have eligibility back. But I still think the number is going to be at least 10. Based on where this year's class is, where the roster will be next year, I think at least 10 is probably the number. I'll say right now, I'll go with 11. I'll go with 11. I think they'll bring in 11 players via the portal, but you also have to wait and see who transfers out, because that can alter whether or not you feel like you have a need at position X, Y, or Z. Is who's still in the program when the regular season comes to a close. Finally, this question from Blazer Duck. Spencer's finally game week. I'm beyond excited. I'm curious if you could fill us in with your itinerary for this week and how you prep not only for Oregon Duck games, but for the return of college football. Man, it feels good to say that. Blazer Duck, my man, I'm so with you. I did 2 reaction shows on Saturday over on Locked On College Football, which you should make your second listener view of the day if you don't already, where I talk all things college football. And it was quite the weekend. Nevada almost beat SMU. Georgia Tech did beat Florida State. Underdogs were 4-0. It was a grand old time. Getting ready for the season, I prepare to do 6 shows a week instead of 5 because I do a reaction show on Saturday after the game. Now, the timing of my reaction shows for this year, for all of you, will always be as quickly as I can possibly do it. And, I watch I see how many people watch the show or download the show. Like, I know you guys like those, and I love them too. They're a lot of fun. They're easy shows, great interactions, especially after a win. It's a good time. The timing with which I will get those up will depend upon my play-by-play schedule with Southern Utah. On Thursday, by the way, Southern Utah at Utah on ESPN Plus. I'll have the play-by-play call on KSUB. But that game being on Thursday is why I can go to the Oregon game on Saturday. So some of you have talked to me about this either over on subtext or on Twitter DMs as well. But if you're interested, I will be at the Oregon football tailgate, and all are welcome to come by, say hi, talk football, and just hang. Like, I will let you know once I have, first of all, if you're interested in going, let me know. Shoot me a message. There are a lot of ways to get in touch with me. Let me know if you'd like to be there. And then once I have specific directions to where that tailgate spot is going to be, I'll let you all know. And then you can just come over and find me and just say, hey, I listened to your show. Can we talk ball? And we'll hang out and talk ball or do whatever. So, or whatever else you do at a tailgate. If there's cornhole around, let's play some cornhole. Like, I freaking love cornhole. It's a great game. Great game. I'm also pretty good at it. Pretty good. I won't say great. Will not say great, but pretty darn good at it. So that's my plan for the week. I'll probably be at the tailgate area around 1:00. That's the game plan that my dad and I have, and I'll be there with a bunch of other longtime Oregon Duck fans / family friends. So I'll be there pretty early. So hopefully I'll get to see some of you out there. It's always a fun time meeting you all in person, and this is the only game I can confirm that I will be at in person this year. And if you want to come by and say hi and you want to hang out, talk football or whatever, by all means, let's make it happen. So, and that's this Saturday. That's 5 days away. How about that? We're finally here. We made it. We made it to the end of the show. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.